My sense is you've been drawn to this video because there's something within you that wants to come through. There's something that you're meant to create. There's something that you're meant to build. There's a certain life that you want to live, and there's something that is just wanting to be offered through that way of life. And I'm sure you've had this vision for quite some time, and I'm sure you've also experienced nights where it keeps you up at night. And you keep having the same thoughts, the same inspirations circling in your mind. You find yourself going on walks and feeling that divine inspiration hitting you. And see, these ideas, they arrive, but then they sit. The conduit opens, but then there's nowhere for the flow to go. There's nowhere for it to land. So you'll find yourself moving in bursts of inspiration, and it'll last about a week until you lose the thread or you're drawn to something else. And if you're anything like me, you're probably curious, open-minded, or you wouldn't have clicked on this video. And you're always looking for ways to better yourself, to expand your consciousness, to improve your quality of life, and to figure out a way to find the intersection between your passions and how to be of the greatest service that you can be to the world, to other people, to be able to provide the life that you want for yourself, for your family. And the inspiration isn't the problem. You have an abundance of inspiration. I was just writing about this earlier. The number one asset right now is not intelligence and it's not inspiration. It is the ability to execute on a vision. It is creative direction. Creative direction is the number one skill that you can develop in the 21st century and moving in to the age of AI. See, you can't be replaced by AI if you unlock the creative divine spark within you and you learn how to become the creative director of the movie of your life. And the way that you do that, which we're going to get into in the beef of this video, is by something that I've discovered called editing your identity. Imagine that you are a character in the movie called Your Life, and that your identity is the driver of the vehicle that is that character. Now, most people identify with the vehicle. They identify as, I'm Bobby Joe from Tennessee, and I'm a software engineer, and blah, 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 blah. But that's not who you are. If we're gonna get metaphysical right here, we'll lift it and then we'll land it into the practical. You are the awareness, and your awareness is the conduit. Think about it. You've never experienced anything in your life through your five senses, through anything but your awareness. And I also include that your intuitive sense as well. Everything that you've seen passed through your awareness. You just assume that that's reality because that's the version of reality that you're seeing. But what if we're only seeing a limited bandwidth of reality based on what we're paying attention to? Everything that you've ever heard passed into your eardrums, was interpreted by your body and your brain, and then passed through to your awareness. No one can quite explain the mystery of consciousness. And the materialistic foundation of the idea that matter is the creator of consciousness doesn't quite hold up when we really look at the fact that we don't really understand exactly what consciousness is. But if you were to strip down the fundamentals, you experience everything through your awareness. And so your perception is the filter on the bandwidth of reality that you can perceive at any moment. So most people that want to become a conscious creator of their reality, they don't struggle with access to information. They struggle with information overload and not knowing what to focus on. And I've been through this myself, and that's why I bring it back to, you get the download, it's flowing through, and you go on this sprint and it's coming through for a week, and then you're on to the next thing. I know I've tried many, many, many different creative approaches, many, many different philosophies, many, many different spiritual practices, and many, many different business models because I'm curious. And when I try something out and it doesn't work, I'm like, well, why didn't that work? And then I go back and I start to learn. But the issue is that this doesn't actually create a through line to the completion of your life's work. And I know that that sounds like a big idea, but I'm going to break this down to why this doesn't just help people to become content creators or to build an online business. This helps people to create a certain way of life. This is also for people who have a vision, who are visionaries, who are here to make change, right, in the real world. And for me, this online channel is just a tool to do that, a tool to express creativity. I believe for people who are creative, who want to be entrepreneurs, who are, the online world is a powerful way for us to not have to have a middleman. Like, now you can reach the masses with your own message. So the issue isn't information. All the information on how to do that is out there. The issue is coherence. Because if anybody could use AI to make a successful business online, creating AI slop, everyone would have done it already. And why is it slop? Because it's stripped of the actual creative spark. If you put in a generic input, you're going to get a generic output. And that's why I no longer use AI to write my original content for me. I use it as a creative sparring partner. I use it to help outline my transmissions into different structures that I deliver at a deeper layer, or for repurposing, or to simply help me cohere my ideas. But I am the one who is actually directing it. So that's just one field. But this also applies to your reality. You need to become the creative director of your reality, because your reality is a byproduct of the filter that you're living in. So there's a model called BETDAR, and it stands for beliefs, emotions, thoughts, decisions, actions, and results. So even deeper than this, I would say people talk a lot about change your beliefs, but your beliefs are just foundational aspects that make up your identity. So if you change your identity at the causal level, you are changing the constellations of the beliefs that make up that self-concept. And this applies to the inner work, but it also applies to the outer work. As within, so without. So if we were to run it through BETDAR, if you change your identity from someone who's a consumer, whose emotions are feeling like a victim, right? Whose thoughts are about world events. I'm not saying this is you, but I'm just using the most base obvious example of like the decisions that follow that are doom scrolling and eating crappy food. The actions that follow that is probably working a regular job that you don't like, and the results that you get are the same life, right? That you don't like, or that's your reality. So I would argue that even more foundational than that is identity to reality. So say you change the identity to being a conscious creator. You believe that you are the conscious creator of your reality. You start to believe, install the belief that you are a successful person and that you have everything at your fingertips available in order to create your destiny and to fulfill the gifts that are within you and to provide a service. And based on those beliefs, you start changing the habits that your vessel is occupied. Like, for example, health is a big part of this, because you can't translate cleanly through a dirty vessel. It's like you are the antenna. All of the ideas are there. And the mind is not just this material brain, it's an antenna. And so what are you tuning into? You need to clean your instrument. And when you do that, bring that into emotions in this model. That involves doing shadow work. That involves being aware of when the limiting beliefs of the old identity appear. You're going to feel the gap between the old identity and the new identity inside of your conduit, which is your body, right? You're going to feel that in different parts of your emotional system and your nervous system, which I would say in this model you could perceive as an energetic system, because it's like now you're using your awareness as the interface to actually be aware of what are these emotional patterns. And then you're going to feel the discomfort between the gap of who you used to be and the gap of who you're going to be. This is talking in depth by many teachers, right? But if you use that as information rather than self-judgment to slip back into the old belief, which is going to produce the same results, it's going to produce the same emotional state, it's going to produce the same thoughts, it's going to make the same decisions, it's going to lead to the same actions, it's going to lead to the same reality, which is exactly what you don't want. And there's nothing wrong with becoming aware of what you don't want if you use it as a springboard for self-development, to actually edit the identity, to change the character that you're playing in the movie called your life. Okay, so you want to become the creative director, become aware of the emotions as information, emotions, energy in motion. It is nothing but data. It's nothing but information on how your avatar's interacting with the simulation that's the video game called your life. So if you want to level up, then you need to become aware, right? We got to become aware of the discomfort between the gap that we're in, who we used to be and who we're becoming. So that gap, I call that discomfort resistance. So if you think of your body as a conduit, there's something that wants to come through you. And if there's resistance, that's a kink in the hose that's pointing to a blockage within yourself that is going to block your creative flow. It's going to block your progress from moving forward. So you need to clear that block by simply becoming aware of the underlying belief of that identity that's holding up that emotion. And by becoming aware of that resistance and clearing that resistance, you clear the static that allows the pure signal to come through. And the signal, we'll get into that in a moment, that is what the pure focus is on, that's actually going to move the needle forward towards your desired reality. Because as those emotions change, as you experience that clearing, I'm sure you've experienced this, your quality of your thoughts starts to change. And so even if you like take an entertaining glance at the idea of being a thought leader, well, what usually those people have a very clear conduit. They have a very clear antenna, they have a very clear focus, and they have a very, very unique and high quality stream of thoughts. Okay, because a high quality stream of thoughts will change the decisions that you make. It will change the perceptual filter through which you're seeing reality, and it's coming off of a different model, which will cause you to take different actions. Like, it's not just by changing your thoughts alone. Like, that's the beef I have with the law of attraction crowd, or just do affirmations, is you're going to the level of mind, and you need to go to the level of body, but beyond that, you need to go to the level of identity. Because if you're just trying to change your thoughts, if you're just trying to think positive thoughts, more often than not, you'll be fighting the negative polarity on the other side of those in a dance back and forth, right? And this is why people are complaining so much about spiritual bypassing in this age, because it doesn't work. It's the principle of polarity. If you look at the Hermetic principles, the principle of polarity is what goes up must come down. There's a left, that means there's a right. If there is no concept of left, there is no concept of right. They exist because of each other. It's the same with positive and negative. If you're trying to be positive without changing your identity and actually changing the emotions that charge the thoughts, because have you ever noticed that if you go for a walk and you're feeling scattered or you're feeling upset, and then you find yourself going through an emotional shift, maybe you're going for a walk, or you may be listening to a good podcast or some music, or you're doing some self-talk, and suddenly your emotional state changes. Have you ever noticed that all of your thoughts automatically change without you having to police them? That's what this is. And then those thoughts lead to a creative inspiration, which then, if you're in flow and you're enacting that, then leads to an output, right? That leads to a results, that leads to a reality change. And so most people don't have an inspiration problem. They have a completion problem. Information is infinite, especially in today's age. And so access to information is not the problem. Inspiration is not the problem. You shouldn't be endlessly seeking inspiration or to channel that. That's part of the process. Just like how it's like we confuse busy work with progress. You really have just scattered your bandwidth across the board. And then the spiritual journey or the self-development journey, depending on how you look at it, is just another form of entertainment and not actually attaining your vision. It's not actually creatively channeling the spark within you. Now, I want to bring this to the concept that Steve Jobs would talk about, and it was called signal and noise. And basically, he said that there are only 3 things that you need to do in a day. That is signal. The rest is noise. And I believe what he meant by that is that the hard choice is not what inspiration to focus on. It's cutting out all of the other good ideas, right? And that is making a decision. A decision is not the same thing as a choice. The root of the word decision means to cut away all other options. So most successful people that I've studied, they make decisions. They say this actually in the laws of success. Like if you look at Napoleon Hill's work and stuff, quick to make a decision, slow to change their mind. Most unsuccessful people are slow to make a decision and very fast to change their minds. That's what Steve Jobs was talking about. Now, the people around him said he had a reality distortion field. And basically, the engineers and stuff, when he was getting Apple off the ground, he would be holding the vision of where this was actually going, what he knew was possible, but the current field of work had not caught up to it. And so even the engineers were like, you're asking me to do something that's impossible. But he knew that was the signal. He was the visionary. He was holding the vision. And so he ignored reality, right? He said, consensus reality isn't real. I see the future. The future hasn't been made yet. And so just because other people don't see it doesn't mean it's not real. It just hasn't been created yet. That's what this threshold calls you to, is actually crossing to the mark of the unseen and being able to hold a vision long enough that you can bring it into the seen world. And so that actually, the reality distortion field that he held, it meant that he distorted reality, because reality is just a consensus agreement. It's a construct of the collective psyche. People who are visionaries have a vision beyond that, and then they steer the ship in that direction. Now, what I'm suggesting is that if you edit your identity, you become the director. You become the visionary behind the movie of your own life. And what this relates to is the Hermetic principle that all is mind. The Hermetic principle of mentalism, right? Everything that we see in our reality, from the phone or the computer that you're watching this on, to the clothes that we're wearing, to the houses that we live in, they all first started as an idea in the mind. And then that idea got created through the act of completion. And I would argue that awakening or changing your consciousness or developing yourself is not actually the goal. I used to believe that. I wanted to help people awaken. I wanted to help them change their consciousness. I wanted to help them with that. But then eventually I realized that the goal is actually self-actualization. The goal is completion. And what does that mean? That means to bring what is within you all the way through to completion. That is the creative act. The creative act is the tool that we use to fulfill our life's work, or as the alchemist called it, the great work, which is essentially what Carl Jung spoke to as integrating the shadow, or bringing the unconscious and the conscious together. So the signal is already there. The static is what gets in the way. And what I mean by this is all of the distractions of the world. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. There's many, many, many things vying for your attention in this digital age, in this modern world, in this industrial world. And many of us want to get back to a simpler life. Many of us are reconnecting with nature. There's a real shift that's happening in a lot of people in humanity. But really, I think what that's pointing to is people want to return to their essential self. They want to return to what is foundational, what is principle and peace. So that's why there's this real return to perennial values, curiosity in the ancient ways. What was working before that isn't working now? And then what is working now that wasn't working before, so we can have a vision of how we're moving into the future, right? So the signal is there. You've just been conditioned out of it, right? So all the things, the scrolling, the Facebook feeds, the people arguing on the forums about their opinions of things, none of that moves the needle forward. None of that actualizes what's within you. None of that is a useful use of energy to actually create a business, to create a project, to create a life. It's just being a part of the peanut gallery of people who are in the consumer identity, right? And so basically, this is your perceptual filter, right? So if you have a dirty lens, you can't see what's possible or act on it, okay? That is your aperture into the field of infinite possibilities. So if you're coming from a limited state of consciousness, which isn't an insult, I go through many limited states of consciousness myself, but the difference is, do we notice when we're in a limited state of consciousness? Do we notice when our lens is dirty? And do we notice when we're paying attention to static versus where we're focusing on the signal? So I would ask you to look at what are the 3 actions that you can take each day from the identity of the conscious creator that will actually move the needle forward in the fruition of your project and your life's work. Identify a vision for what you want your life to look like 10 years from now, and work your way back 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, a month from now. What do you want to be remembered for when you're on your deathbed, or people are there after you've crossed? And people aren't there talking about all the great things that you achieved in the world. They're talking about the type of person that you were. Go to that moment. What do you want to be remembered for? What is the mark that you want to leave on the world? What is the kind of person that you want to be? And then work your way back to now. So what is that project? What are the very simple things that are going to move that forward? And more often than not, it's putting your thing out there. It's building your own thing, right? That's why I'm really big on the creator economy being a pathway for people who don't want to be in the traditional system, which is becoming, more and more obsolete anyways. And I'm not saying that AI is going to replace everyone's jobs. It is going to replace a lot of redundancies though. And so in order to prepare ourselves for the future, we need to become irreplaceable. And the only way to do that is to self-actualize and to bring our life's work out, bring what is within us out into expression. And the best way to do this is by picking one project. Pick one project that aligns with your core values and the identity of the conscious creator, and then work back the 3 things you need to do each day that will actually move the needle forward. Anything else can be things that are come along the way. How to organize the business, how to start the LLC, how to post the video, how to get the land, whatever it is, right? Those are all details, but what are the actual core steps that will move you forward? Because then you can see, you'll start picking up on the opportunities. Because you're looking through that filter now. So the tools will start coming to you. The right information will start coming to you. Because now you focus the lens, because there's so much information, right? There's so much in the field. When you pick that focus and you decide to bring something through to completion and hold yourself to it, complete the project. You don't build your life's work by building the temple first. You got to build the door to let people in. And then that is your offering, right? That is your business. That is what you have to say. That is, if you're doing a channel, that is content, right? If you're doing it directly with communication, it's communication with people, right? It's the invitation. And so that's what allows you to actually build your world as you go, right? And so you'll start to notice the right tools will come to you, right? The right AI tool, how to use it. If you wanted to build an app, everything that you would do, you would just need to decide to basically vibe code that app and then continue to iterate it. And then by that focus on completing that, everything that you need will come to you through that discovery process. So people get lost in the step before they actually commit to the project, ideating about and dreaming about, which is great. Identify the vision, but then you have to like create a conduit to actually like consistently execute on that in order to bring that into fruition, so that you'll start to get the feedback and all the cooperative components coming into you, coming into your awareness, coming into your reality, that help you to fulfill that. And this comes back to basic, like, people think I need to have the thing to do the thing so that I can be who I want to be, right? No, you need to edit the identity so you are being the version of you, starting with identifying that feeling of what it is, because the life that you want, you think it's all the nice things, right? But it's actually the feeling and the experience that you would have in having that thing. So then start acting from that version of yourself, and you will have the thing that it is that you want. So this is the completion gap, right? You need to understand that this is the observer effect. So like they did with the quantum slit experiment, they noticed that when the observer was watching them shooting the particles at the wall through the slit, they were particles. When the observer stepped away and was no longer looking at them, they were waveforms or something like that. And so what I'm saying is the observer effect turns the wave into the particle. So whatever aspect of reality that you are focusing on is what you're going to get more and more and more of, and then that's going to collapse the wave into the particle. And so there are 3 ways to bring this through, 3 levels to this that I was looking at on how to clear the static and tune into the signal: reality, identity, and creation. Reality is paying attention to what you're paying attention to. It's an attention audit. When we are consistently becoming meta aware of what we are aware of and asking ourselves, is this static or is this signal, right? Then we have an orientation point to move forward, right? And bring it through to completion, to actually complete the project, to complete the post, to complete the build, and then ship it out and share it, right? So identity is a structure that you can edit. So this relates to as within, so without, right? So your identity being made up of beliefs can be edited. And I'm actually going to be diving this more into my letters, which you can find in my Substack, about how you can actually create a model of your identity, and it's something that you can edit both on your computer and internally, right? Because your identity is your brand. So if you want to change the quality of the results that you're getting, you have to change the quality of the outputs that are coming through the actions that identity is taking. So if you have limited beliefs, that's the output you're going to get. If you have aligned beliefs, that's the signal. And then that's the output that's the reality that you're going to get as well, right? So this relates to creative, the creation aspect of this. This is bringing the conduit of the inspiration into creation all the way through. So it's the inner to the outer process. And when you complete the creative act, now you are giving it a conduit, somewhere to go. You're giving the current somewhere to go. That completion mechanism acts as a self-actualization process. So every time you complete something, you're going to get a hit of positive emotion, and it's going to reinforce this new identity as a conscious creator. And you're also they show how positive states change your neural chemistry and create dopamine and create all these neurophysical changes, and they change how the wiring inside of your brain, and everything changes. And I would say also your nervous system, because really your body is the computer and your memory bank is the subconscious, right? So training yourself to completion, right? That is having mastery over your energy. That is having mastery over the creative channel. That is acting as a conduit. Now, identity editing is the mechanism that you use to do this. This is the applied metaphysics. So when you edit the structure, you change the outputs. Your beliefs are the operating system, the scripts that you're running, and the perceptual filter through which you're perceiving the game of life. And so if you relate this to a video game, if you want to level up, I loved video games as a kid. I played a lot of them. And a lot of successful people have translated their love for games into game theory, into how they live life, because it works very similar if you want to succeed in a creative project, or build a channel, or create a business, right? Or create a brand. It all starts from the inside out. And so you have to realize that your identity is the character you're playing in the game. And so the operating system is like the heads-up display that you are operating through. So if you change your beliefs, you change your heads-up display. If you change the scripts that you're using to run through reality, it's like you now got a more powerful sword to defeat the monsters in the game. And now if you change the filter through which you're experiencing, now you might just start to notice new quests opening up in the game that will help you to fulfill leveling up your character. And so what those quests would be, those would be the things you need to do each day to move the needle forward. That's the signal. That's bringing the divine inspiration through into the creative act. And I would argue that that is the alchemist's gold. Now, clearing the noise, clearing the static is a form of shadow work, if you want to call it that, or subconscious reprogramming, or whatever. Insert blank here. But ultimately, as we're moving forward and leveling up, right, and we're editing our identity, we're changing our character. Also think, if you're going to change your character, you might consider that in a game, you can choose what to equip the character with, just like you can choose which clothes you wear. So when you look in the mirror, you can start to change things in your environment and the way that you dress, the way that you show up. You know, like if you're slovenly, right, and you're trying to become successful, then start dressing like a successful person, right? Because then you'll have every time you look in the mirror, you'll be reinforcing that new character. And then you'll be changing the actions that character takes. You'll be noticing that the heads-up display has changed, and you'll notice different quests opening up, different game items appearing, or tools that you can use to build your business or finish the project, right? Because in order to create value for other players in the game, in order to take what's in you and turn it into an in-game item that other players can use, that is, you have to complete the item to at least a minimum viable game item that you can hand other players, that they can exchange gold to you for, so that you can then continue to build your character's empire or kingdom or whatever, or home base, or level them up, or get them better in-game items, right? Which then allows you to pursue the next quest. It's like, it's the same thing, right? And so as we become aware of what's getting in the way, that's the actual challenges that we're going to face as we decide to go through the quests. But if you're living life on easy mode, never challenging your comfort zone and never doing anything difficult, like taking a cold shower or going for a run or whatever, it's like we need to challenge those edges to keep ourselves sharp. And if you've ever played a game on easy mode, it gets boring pretty fast. You need enough challenge to keep things interesting. And if life is boring, then you're not engaging your skills enough. And the more that you engage your skills, the more you're going to increase your XP, and the more that you're going to level up, and you're going to gain new perks, right? You're going to gain new qualities of character or new aspects of your identity. And then those are things that you can use as cheat codes in the game to continue to move through. So this is a kind of like a hack for the game of life applied to being able to edit your identity, and realize that when you have a clean reality filter, you're not being a consumer, you're not wasting your energy, you're focused, you're a creator, you're honed in on the signal, and you change on the level of identity. This will create different actions automatically. This is where your execution becomes inevitable, because it's a byproduct of who you are being. Because for a successful CEO, you might look at them and be like, oh, that would be so hard to get up and go manage that company. To them, it would be hard not to, right? If you look at a professional athlete, that you would say, like, that must be hard doing that training every day. To them, it would be hard to give up on that, because they've trained themselves into the identity of somebody who does that. That's how people, it's like you got to train a muscle. Like you want to become good at writing. I started writing when I was in elementary school. And the reason that I started creatively writing and journaling, because I was fascinated by the idea of being able to take an idea in my mind, turn it into a word, and then create something in the physical world that was a representation of that creativity. And so it's like, there comes a practice of actually being in your craft that then develops that skill over time. And then that brings me to just touching on the law of assumption. A lot of people Neville Goddard's teachings have become very, very popular in recent times. Especially the last decade, it's had another surge, because he was speaking to the idea that if you change on the level of identity, you change your assumption, you change your belief, you will walk as that version of you and automatically take the actions, and things will start to happen in your reality because you've now embodied that different version of yourself. And this is the same thing as tuning into the feeling that it's already done and having a vision, right? And feeling that it's already done. Using the divine power of your imagination to actualize that goal or that vision. I prefer the lens vision because goal feels very productivity, whereas vision feels very leading edge to me. And I'll leave you with this. The great work is unearthing your life's work. And the work of art that you create is your life. It is you. First and foremost, if you want to create anything, you must create yourself to be the way that you want to be. And if you create yourself to be the way that you want to be, your life will change with it. Because your sustained attention is worth protecting. In an era that's vying for your energy all the time, you must clear the static and honor the signal always. And if you want to go deeper into this work with me, I have various tools, and I also have a workshop coming up where we're going to be diving into how to identify what is that soul signal. What is it that keeps returning? If you continue to have these inspirations, if you continue to have this vision and you're ready to close that gap, well, you can check that out, and I'd love to see you there. And also, in the coming weeks, we'll be opening up the latest version of the cohort that will be also a transformational container to embody the conscious creator, and we'll also be going into all the ways that we can audit our attention, that we can use the tools, the modern tools that we have, in order to actualize our life's work. And really, I believe that more conscious creators that come online doing this work and creating a different story for humanity, creating different solutions for humanity, this is how we start to change the world, right? And it's through that network effect. And it's through us unlocking our greatest gifts to the fullest capacity and sharing them with the world that we change the world one person at a time. And that is the ripple effect, right? Because as each person then changes, and they turn around and change other people's lives, it ripples out. And so the conscious creators of this age are the modern mystics, the visionaries, the thought leaders of the past. Because now we have this digital fire to tend. We have the ability to tell stories, to share knowledge that can change people's lives, to create tools that can change people's lives, and to create and gather resources in the game of life that then allow us to make an impact on helping the planet and creating larger levels of change on a societal level. Because perhaps awakening at that stage is not about escaping the matrix. It's actually about infiltrating it, and being the change that we want to see means editing the larger reality. So let's edit our own identities to change our own realities, and then work together to edit the matrix. I see you guys on the next one. And if you want to dive deeper, you can check out this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.